This is Doug, and welcome to the Practicing Accountant podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about fantasy football. Well, we are going to be talking a little bit more about accounting than fantasy football, but we are going to be focused on your services and how you might be able to increase your capacity, your revenue, and the hours that you spend working by focusing more on your services and which ones are the best ones for you as well as your clients. I hope you enjoy this episode. Football season. Football's upon
Finally.
us. Yeah, finally, right?
It
Although,
feels like it outside. It's cold, rainy.
it finally showed up. I've been getting a little tired of the hot, but yeah, I mean, the last 3 weeks of football and preseason, and now we're as of tonight, as of recording this, we are legit with the season.
Who plays tonight?
Um,
Chiefs, probably.
Kansas City, and is it Baltimore? I think that's who it is. Do you do fantasy football?
I used to. Um, we just, I couldn't get anybody to participate to make it fun enough. People would just not update their teams, so we just kind of let it die off. What about you?
People were playing like hurt players and
Yeah,
and not addressing bye weeks and stuff like that.
right. Yep.
I play. I wouldn't say I play well, but I play, and I've got a group of guys that I played with for I don't even know, forever. And we've been blessed with this commissioner that over the last maybe 4 or 5 years, he's stayed in the same position because usually we rotate. And he just does this amazing job of engaging with everyone and making sure we're all connected and informed and laughing and having a good time. And we had our live draft this past week, and it was just great to see everyone. We do it on Zoom so everyone can see each other, and the guys are all across the country.
Cool.
But the thing I love about it, there was just the idea of like building like the perfect team. And I have a point to this, but like identifying where the weaknesses are, identifying the key players, identifying kind of the stats you need or the numbers you need or the players you need. I think a lot of times in public accounting, we don't really pay attention to what's available resource wise. And we tend to kind of have this kind of tunnel vision that we have to have more resources, more CPAs, more preparers, more whatevers. And we kind of have this plan that we're going to build a firm or a business that's going to be built on these certain particular resources. Those same particular and certain resources that are really hard to come by these days. And because of that, that tunnel vision then causes, I think, a lot of folks in accounting to work a lot harder than they need to and suffer for it. And I'm not going to state my opinion necessarily on offshoring, but given the fact that there's not a lot of opportunities right now for onshoring, or at least having trouble finding those resources, like I get it. Like I understand why. I mean, it's just I need help and I need to bring someone in, and offshoring is an option, and there's a lot of business being done. A lot of returns and books that are being kept by folks that are not in the United States. And it's creating a lot of capacity for accountants in the country, which I think is great. And if they're able to scale and do more business by using those resources and create more of the lifestyle and experience of public accounting that they prefer, more power to them. But there's other resources besides offshore. There's project managers, there's executive assistants or virtual assistants, there's office managers, there's folks that can take so much off of your plate that we're not considering because of this tunnel vision. And so kind of like these drafts, like just considering the different positions you can fill, who's your quarterback? It's probably the person who's reviewing. Who's your receivers and your running backs? It's likely the folks that are preparing. But then there's this whole other, set of resources that can be brought into a firm to support it in its efforts to be successful. But I think we get too caught up in just needing another billable body, and we don't consider the opportunity costs of the non-billable work that we do that we could be using others for. And that goes for technology too. One of the players on your fantasy team should be technology. Another player should be workflow. Another player should be office manager. And that's kind of like the optional player that can play different positions. They can be scheduling meetings, they can be preparing agendas, they can be reviewing, little things, going through reports and presentations, confirming meetings, talking to clients, interfacing with them, getting the deliverables on time, putting out engagement letters. None of those things have to be done by a CPA or even someone very experienced in accounting at all. But I think that tunnel vision, just trying to get that other wide receiver, that other running back, doesn't let us pay attention to some other things that could be extremely helpful in building your business the right way. So, I've taken football to fantasy football to drafting for your firm.
No,
I guess it's where we're at.
I'm with you. I think there has to be a focus on billable work, of course. That's so we get paid for, but you have to backfill that with the resources to make that function more smoothly. And if you ignore that, you're gonna have high paid talent doing shit that they should not be doing.
Yeah.
Sending engagement letters, processing returns,
rolling files forward,
asking for signatures. I mean, just ridiculous things that they shouldn't be spending time on. So,
well, if you think about the CPA license itself, the only thing that you need that for is to, represent a client and sign an audit report, and that's it. Mm-hmm. But if you look at all the things that the CPA license is actually doing, the list gets way too long. There's just way too many functions that CPAs and accountants are performing that could be delegated, could be leveraged, could be automated, could be, AI. AI has been a savior for me because I have to do some content sometimes. And I'm not talking about social media. I'm talking about like a good email or a good story or a good response to something. And I've become much more efficient with AI because it's allowed me to get my thoughts out in a way that allows me to have a really strong starting point. And all I have to do is edit and make it my own and use it. And so, and sometimes I'll write just junk and then throw it in the AI and let it sort it out, and then I'll reorganize it for myself. But I guess the point is, if you could draft your team for your firm, don't forget about those other supporting players. And then that could be offshore, it could be administrative support, it could be virtual assistant support, whatever it might be. Yep. Just keep an eye on those other players. And so if there's a call to action from this, I always encourage my clients to keep a pad of paper next to them at their desk when they work. And as they're doing something, ask themselves, is this something that only I can do? Or is this something that someone else could be doing for me? Or something else could be doing for me? And write that down. You don't have to act on it in that moment. You don't have to do anything about it at that moment, but just notice, what it is you do that you shouldn't or don't have to do, and keep that list going. And then as that list grows, you can start assigning that list to fictional, undrafted players that may be coming into your firm that can save you a lot of time, which is more space for client service or more clients or whatever it might be. But that would be my call to actions. Keep a list of the things you do that you shouldn't or don't need to be doing, and let it grow. Assign that to players you don't have. And just once it gets to a point of, this makes sense, at least part-time to bring someone in, and there's your chance.
Time to bring on the kicker.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. That was a joke the other night in the live draft. Like, the first person to draft a kicker has to finish a beer or something like that.
Yeah.
All right. That wasn't what we were supposed to talk about today, although that was interesting. And what we were really talking about today is why reducing your service offerings can increase capacity. Now that CAS has become a real thing, and depending on which side of the aisle you fall on, some people think that's client advisory services. Some people call it client accounting services. And I don't necessarily know if there's one that's right or not. But with the introduction of CAS, a lot of folks are reaching out and trying to find different ways to serve their clients. And they're doing everything they can. They're becoming, basically outsourced accounting departments for a lot of clients. I think it's great because it's, in essence, it's better and more ways to serve a client. Theoretically, should provide you more revenue. gives you access to that subscription or that value-based pricing model that so many are seeking, and keeps your team and yourself busy and in tight with your clients. So it all sounds really good. However, who's watching to see if those services are actually generating a return that you would prefer to receive? Who's actually determining whether the things that you do are worth your time or not, or valuable to the client? And it's starting to get a little bit out of control. Like you'll find a bookkeeper that does virtual CFO, bookkeeping, payroll, tax filings, HR functions, presentations of monthly financial statements, strategic reporting, blah, blah, blah. Like it's a long list of things, all things that you get paid for. So I understand that. But are you actually getting a solid return out of it? What does the client think they're paying for? Do they feel like they're really paying for payroll services or tax filings, or do they feel like they're paying for your advice and your counsel and your strategy?
Sure.
Because if they're thinking more along those lines, that's an opportunity for you to pass some of that work along, especially if it's low margin work. So, so once, and especially with things starting to get automated, with AI, especially around books and journal entries and data entry, those are again going to be things that are probably going to be low margin, less valued, less important. But if we're still providing them, what's that doing to our capacity? It's diminishing it. The best way I can explain it is if you did all those services for 10 clients, what would you charge? Versus if you only did, say, virtual CFO for 10 clients, what would you charge?
Sure.
I would imagine there won't be that much of a difference between the two, but the amount of time you spend on each of them will be significantly different. And that's, I guess, is my point.
Yeah.
What is the highest value, highest margin service that you provide for your client? And if we're not leaning into that and really trying to create a business on that, we could be trying to grow a low margin, low value business if we're not careful. But because we're trying to be everything we can be to our clients, we lose sight of that perspective. So what do we do about it? Well, to me, that we've talked about the Pareto principle here before, and that's the 80-20 rule. The idea being that 80% of your revenue is coming from 20% of your services. And if you can actually see that in your business, if you can actually dissect your business, carve it up, look at your verticals, and say, okay, here's a vertical for CFO, here's a vertical for bookkeeping, here's a vertical for payroll, here's a vertical for tax filings, here's a vertical for tax prep. But actually look at where your revenue is coming from in those buckets, and also recognize which one of those is actually taking less of your time versus more of your time. And with that perspective, you might find the Pareto principle existing within your firm as it is today, that 80% of your revenue is coming from 20% of your effort, or something like that. And that information is valuable because that means potentially, you could get rid of 80% of the crap that you're doing and only affect revenue by 20%. That's the flip side of it. And then if you took that extra time, all that time, and put it into more of that high margin, high value work, you're going to be better off. You're going to be making more money. You're going to be working less. That to me is a big win.
Yeah. A little bit.
Yeah. It's again, it's kind of like drafting in football where, you don't want to spend too much time on the kicker. You don't want to spend, no offense to kickers out there. You're not going to spend too much time on some of those option players. You want to focus on your primary players that are going to give you the most points. You're going to bring them in first. It's the same thing with services. You want to focus on your high end, high value, high margin services, and not pay too much attention to the kickers and the defenses and some of the other players on that team. But the whole opportunity here again is to earn more and work less. And you're in my theme for a long time has been building capacity through pricing. And I think there's opportunity to build capacity through just having awareness of your services.
The firm I worked for, before I owned a firm, it was a tax firm. It was tax preparation. That was the main bread and butter. We did some forensic accounting too, but the main thing was tax prep. But we would do bookkeeping if clients asked for it. and we sucked at it because we didn't have a process for it. And so it just became this giant sort of loss leader that we ended up doing for a lot of clients and not very efficiently. When we should have to our guns and found a great bookkeeper to outsource that work to, or have a referral relationship with, instead of just trying to bring it on for revenue's sake, because we weren't profitable on it. Because we weren't fast at it. And accountants knew how to do bookkeeping, but not like a bookkeeping specific firm would. They were great at tax prep, but just because you're great at one aspect of accounting doesn't mean you're good at the others. And CPAs have a hard time um, admitting that. I think often that if they're a CPA, they think they're good at all aspects of accounting. Some obviously are no, they're not bookkeepers, but um, yeah, just like picking a niche in a client. This is still picking a niche. It's just a service niche. Pick what you're good at and find that cross section of what you're good at and what's profitable, and stay in that lane.
Well, a concept that's been popping up more so since COVID, but the concept is called co-firming.
Mm,
And co-firm is where it's like a cooperative of firms
I like
where
that.
one is really good at one thing, like virtual CFO or part-time CFO, and another one's really good at another thing like bookkeeping, and another one's really good at payroll, and another one's really good at whatever,
Mm,
and they share work.
right.
And from the client's perspective, you can do it, either way, but from a client's perspective, it could be all through one firm, all their stuff gets done, but not by the firm necessarily that they've hired. Or you can, come together as a group and work with the client and just say you're a preferred provider and,
Hmm.
you all share in the work. But I love that concept because it allows folks that are really good at and really focused on, to your point, that service niche. It allows them to stay in their lane. And, if they're finding work and passing along to others, they can earn margin on the work that they're sharing. The other guy still gets paid what they expect to, and then the guy that found the work gets, 10, 15% on top of whatever that is. And everyone wins, with that co-firming concept. I think we're going to hear a lot about that as we continue into this kind of new era of accounting, the new models of accounting, because I think there's just so much work out there. And I think accountants are going to figure out that they can't do it all, and they're going to be much more generous in sharing work amongst themselves. Because I think there's been kind of a natural competitive resistance. And that's not the right word. Accountants don't like to compete with one another, but yet they feel like they are.
Mm,
But I think that this day and age is now creating kind of hey, there's plenty of work for everyone. There's an abundance of effort out there that we can pursue. Why are we, fighting amongst each other and driving our prices down and just trying to be the cheapest one when we could work together, share services, co-firm, focus on the things that we really are good at and like to do, and let's just all have a cut of that pie.
yep. And it's better for the clients as well. If you're a bookkeeping firm that's trying to throw in tax prep and you aren't necessarily the best at tax prep, are you doing the client a favor in that situation? Probably not.
Hmm.
Um, and
The words that come out of accountants' mouths, a client has a valuation, or a client needs expert witness, or a client needs a special report on something. They go to their accountant, they say, is this something you can do? And the
mhm,
accountants, instantly goes, yeah, of course. In the back of their mind, they're going, holy shit, I've never done one of these before. I guess it's time to learn. And that exposes them to risk. It exposes them to inefficiency. It exposes them to doing a bad job. It exposes them to lawsuits, exposes them to all kinds of risks. But yet, because they want to be everything they can be to their client, they're saying, sure, why not? Let's risk everything and put out this report that maybe is what they were looking for and maybe not. But that's something that I think is changing is recognizing that I don't have to be everything to my clients. I can be the relationship for my clients that manages others that serve them, but I
mhm,
don't have to be the one that's doing it. In bigger firms, they usually designate different types of partners. And the partner who brings in the client and has the relationship with the client is the relationship partner. But then he has these, call them, supporting partners or producing partners or whatever partners that actually do the work. And so you've got one in audit, you got one in tax, you got one in consulting, and they're in charge of the projects and the compliance work that needs to be done for the client that the relationship partner manages. And I think that same kind of thing is possible for solopreneurs. You have a functional solopreneur with a good client relationship that is delegating and passing along work that's either out of their wheelhouse or out of their kind of their Pareto, and still serving clients, still making sure they're being served well, still making sure it's quality, not taking on that risk, and still able to bill and earn from it, some cut for the work that they're providing to others.
Stay
The advice that I've worked with a few clients over the last few months that similar questions: how do I get more clients? And one of my first responses, and I've said this here before, one of my first responses is start networking with other CPAs. Knock on their door, and whether it's a service or a niche that you have expertise in or interest in, share that with your network of other CPAs, similar sized and bigger, and let them know what it is you'd love to do and really want to do more of. And that's the first step towards creating kind of that co-firm atmosphere, or at least something that's going to provide you with opportunities, because it doesn't have to just be you that finds it. Other CPAs can find work that they're not interested in, or it's not in their niche, or they don't have the expertise. And by you reaching out, now they have a name that they can reach out to. There's a networking group in Colorado that's made up of former big firm players, and they pass work amongst themselves all the time. I need an expert white paper on a technical matter. I have too much bookkeeping work. I have a nonprofit that I don't serve them, but if anyone does like nonprofit, I've got that work. Or I need resources, whatever it might be. They're co-forming on a pretty large scale and helping each other. And it's just, and they're all full. They're all busy. And the firm they used to be at, this big firm, they hear about things that are too small for them or just not something they want to do, and they pass it off to this group, and they get work from it. So
cool. Yep.
I think if there's a message here outside of kind of doing that analysis on where you might be spending too much time and not making enough money, it is to connect with CPAs and share what service offerings you like to give and hear what they like to give. And that's a first step towards creating capacity for both firms, and possibly more revenue and possibly more capacity.
You bet. Awesome, man.
That's all I got.
Appreciate you.
All right,
Talk
cheers.
to you next time. See you.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Practicing Accountant Podcast. We hope you learned a few things. There's some homework for you. Keep that list of things that you do and don't have to, so you know who to draft onto your fantasy accounting firm team. And also take a look at your services. Identify which ones you tend to make more money from and spend less time on. That Pareto principle is real. And with some intention, you can create higher profits and less hours in your firm, which is always our hope for you, and to improve the experience of being in your business. We hope you share and like this episode and tune in next time. But again, thank you very much for watching. Cheers.